Hello and welcome back to the channel where we are building a video game from scratch using Love2d and Lua. So yesterday we tried to optimize our warp zones. So what that looks like is like the warp zones that we place to teleport from one scene to the other. Now we got it working yesterday, but it is not working correctly in the sense that the params we pass in aren't correct. So let's take a look and see if we can find that. It's in the warp zone inserts, and today, you know, it is technically the 13th, but I'll probably be posting this for November 12th anyway, because I just got started late and we're crashing on Twitch. I am not surprised. Okay. So yesterday we wrote this function called insertWarpZone, and it takes in 8 params. Takes in, you know, a row and column of the warp from, a row and column of the warp to, and then these 4 are a warp to nope. It needs to be, where do we define this function here? Right here. So then there's a warp from X, warp from Y, warp to X, warp to Y. So this is what got me all confused yesterday, because this is kind of a bad way of thinking about it. So we're going to walk through what these parameters are doing, and then see if we can wrap our head around either a better name for it or just figure out the bug that we're doing, because I'll show the bug. So for example, for the tavern, we're saying that the warp zone gets placed at 9 and 3. Now that's correct. That's correct, because if we look at this is 9 columns over, 3 rows down. So the goal is we give it the row and column of the exact tile that we want to put the warp zone, but then the warp zone gets inserted just above that. So there's a square right up here that is our actual warp zone, and that's being placed just outside of view so that when we collide with it, we warp. But this one we pass in 3 and 9. Let's look at that. So we're saying the third column, which there's 1, 2, 3, and then 9 rows down, which there's only 8 rows. So this is the issue I'm having. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So if this is, yeah, if this is really 8 tiles tall, then we need to modify our parameters so that we can pass in 8, and it gives us the same result, which is a warp zone just out of frame beneath our 8th tile. So it's this last parameter here that is wrong. So let's look at how we're calculating that last parameter. We call it warp to Y, which is not a good name for it. Warp to Y. So I guess the warp from and warp to was my idea of if every warp zone has, you know, it's like a tunnel, you know, there's an A and there's a B. We're saying the A scene is the froms and the B scene is the warp to. So even though we don't warp, yeah, it might be easier to phrase it like warp A, but then it's just weird, right? Warp from warp zone A, X, warp zone B, X. That is just, that just sounds just as confusing as this. So we know our warp to Y is incorrect, and we're calculating what our warp to Y is. Now let's see where we're using warp to Y. We're not even using it in the first warp zone, right? Because we're not using it in the overworld, we're using it in the tavern. Because, yeah, this needs to be the warp 2 position to get us back to the overworld. So we're calculating warp to Y here. We're saying multiply by the tile size and subtract a tile size so that we can get the proper Y range. So if we were to pass it warp to Y, warp to row 1 times tile size is 16 minus 16 is 0. That gives us the very top of the very top of our screen to be equal to row 1, and that's correct. So I guess if we can kind of, maybe we can see what happens if we put the warp to Y as a 1. Because if it's a 1, it should be at the very top right. Oh, see, look. Oh, God. Okay, so warp Y. See, so this is the issue here. It's, well, if I stop messing it up. The issue is we're not trying to place the warp 2 object exactly where we say. We said put it at 1, and that's technically, that's right at 1. But if we were to put this at, for example, the correct warp to Y value, which would be 8 instead of 9, it would put the square right up here instead of right beneath it where we can trigger it when we walk down into it. So let's see, and it gets a little more tricky because we're using, so warp to Y is the do we use warp to Y anywhere other than this? Let's see. No, it looks like it's just here. Okay, so as far as our warp zone parameters are called, this is the X and Y of the warp zone that we're inserting. And then our warp to Y, yeah, so all we need to do is lower our warp to Y. We need to increase the Y position by about 16, which should lower us in the frame. And Twitch is just not wanting to stream consistently, so sorry about that. So let's see here. Our warp to Y doesn't need to go here, it needs to go lower. See, and then how much lower? Not a whole tile size lower, but if we add 10 to our warp to Y, let's see what happens with a warp zone warp to Y value of 1. Shouldn't it be at the flush top? It should be a little lower, which it is. So if we were to say now, hey, this is actually back at 9 now. Let's see. We're looking to avoid, oh, well, it's just a little too low, I guess. Let's see if it's not 10 pixels lower, but maybe it's just 8. You know, there's like, this is the guessing I was talking about that I wanted to write this function for. Okay, so that's still too low. It's coming up like way too low. So even if we were to, oh, this is the wrong one. Yeah, we leave that. This warp to y is the value we want to change. So let's put in 5 there and see if we can still see the green square here. We can't see the green square, but it also doesn't trigger. So why does it look like our green square is like always tethered to the bottom there? Because if we omit the +5, it's one tile size off, right? That is weird. Okay, so let's try this again. We're gonna put 8, which is the proper warp to y value, and then we're gonna say our warp to y gets lowered by about 5. I don't know if that's a good value, but we'll see. And we're gonna see, okay, so see, we can still see it. It doesn't trigger. Okay, so let's see if we plus 10, if that is too low. Okay, that's looking okay. I like it a little lower than that, I think. I think that's okay. Should he go any further in before we trigger it? Hey, Yara, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I thought it was kind of like a curtain close, like almost like a old like Star Wars transition. Okay, so with that adjusted, can we give the proper 8th param here? And then we'll test it and make sure that they work. So that it should only be on the warp back that they were screwed up. So let's see. Okay, yeah, that's looking okay. Okay, that one works. And then the dungeon. Okay, sweet. Yeah, it's working. Okay. So now we have the proper... Okay, so we fixed the bug from yesterday, so that's good. We will probably just clean this up. See, one thing I don't like that these are all like these weird, seemingly random numbers we're adjusting things by, but this is why the arithmetic was so hard for me to do, because before we did this function, I was doing all this arithmetic based on these params, which I had to constantly remind myself of, and I couldn't keep any sense of it. So now we can just give it the global map row and column, the warp 2 row and column, and then we give it the tile row, actually tile column, and then row. Yeah. Tile X, tile Y, tile X, tile Y for both the warp 2 and the warp from zones. So that's going to make it so much easier. So now we can get rid of all of this junk. So now if we decide to move any of these warp zones, we shouldn't have to do any. The only thing we have to do is, like, if we draw it to a new location, we need to give it the updated parameter here for the appropriate map. And then if we move the location of the actual warp zone, we just give it the right tile. I don't want to say tile ID, but like the, you know, how many tiles over and down we need to insert both the warp to zone and the warp from zone. So if we wanted to add another dungeon or room or whatever, it would be, you know, trivial to add another warp zone. Okay. Well, I've got work in the morning. I'm probably gonna wrap it up. I got started way too late today, but I didn't want to miss programming. So at least we fixed the bug. I think next, you know, I think we're really close to making a new mobile deployment here. We do need to put the proper controls because now it's WASD to move, and then P is your A button, Enter is actually your inventory, P is interact. So we have to change all of this, but then also I guess it's a little tricky because on the mobile deployment you could be on your phone and you could be on the keyboard. So I think the move is we'll have in-game controls to, I don't know. Yeah, I guess we'll have in-game controls default to keyboard. And then when we deploy on the mobile, we'll add a little mobile control scheme that says, you know, D-pad for walking, A is your, I don't know, it's pretty self-apparent, or, yeah. And, I don't know, this is something I come down to, like, you know, it's like when I first played Link's Awakening, I wasn't cracking open the manual and looking at what buttons did what. You know, I just figured it out. So at least on mobile, the Game Boy is pretty self-explanatory, because if we, you know, we're going to have a mode in the game where we can toggle the Game Boy overlay if you wanted to see it, because, you know, this is, you know, the game would be full screen. We don't have it full screen because it messes up with OBS and streaming and stuff, but it would default to full screen. But then ideally we would come into our menu settings and say, hey, toggle our Game Boy mode, which you can't see the full Game Boy because I'm developing and this is the size I chose for the stream, but it would basically fit the full screen where you would see the whole Game Boy UI, and it kind of, as you press the buttons, they would kind of dim for some feedback. But I think I don't know, I'm a little torn if we should put the controls in game or just have it on the mobile deployment, because when most people play it, it's probably going to be on the mobile deployment, at least for, you know, until we have like an actual build ready for people to play. So maybe we don't stress it too much. I don't know. I guess the tough thing is, like, how are people supposed to know that P and O are the A and B buttons? WASD is easy enough to figure out, but how do you know that P is an A button and O is a B button and Enter is the start button and H is technically the select button? So that's all over the place, but yeah, I'll do some thinking on how I want to structure that. Let's just change the controls now while we're looking at it. So let's... yeah, we're going to say WASD is move. And then I'm going to say P key is A button. O key is the B button. 60, 70, 80. Oh, we jacked up. We jacked up. Let me see. Let me see if we can fit another line on there. Yeah, we should be able to fit another line. So let's put, it looks like they're a Y displacement of 20. So we'll go that this is 80, this is 100, and it's actually going to be, yeah, enter becomes inventory. H is help. So and this is for the faux drop shadow stuff I have, so that's why we have to type it twice. Then we need one more. That is 99. And that is enter inventory. Just want little backticks or apostrophes here to kind of signify that it's a key press. It'll screw up the... Wow. I don't like the 1 pixel single quote. Okay, so we'll just say that's gonna look weird, huh? P is A button, O is B button. That's just weird. Yeah, we'll go back to key. At least that's somewhat right now. So now people can at least, you know, maybe we should add H to toggle help. So we'd have to scoot everything up, which sucks. Yeah. You know, I'm about to pass out and I got work in the morning, so we're gonna have to call it here. Let's check out our get diff and see if we missed anything. So we just shifted down our warp to Y and that fixed our whole bug. We took out some old comments and we just adjusted our controls. So we did not a lot, but we fixed a bug today, which is good. So let's just say we fix the last parameter for the warp zone function, and we get push, and we will call it a night. Let's raid out here. All right. So yeah, I guess tomorrow I might do some pixel art for the insides of the inn, making like a little bed or furnishings for the inn, or maybe bar top and stools and stuff for the tavern. And then once that's done, we might be at a decent spot to make that new build for the web deployment. Yeah. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'll be back tomorrow. Have a good night.